So firstly, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you all. As you can guess, we're well above the legal limit for this hall occupancy.
Yes.
So we don't expect a fire this evening, but in the event that we do have one, the exits are clearly marked to this door, that door, and through the Runnymede room. May I, as a courtesy, please ask those that have mobile phones to make certain that they're switched off on silent, and those that are lucky enough to have the new Apple Watches, please do the same. As this is a public meeting, a resident has requested permission to film the meeting. Please indicate if you have any objections to ensure that you do not take on a cameo role during the process. I'd like to introduce the players. I'm not on the wanted list as you see above me. I'm the County Council for Fox Hills, Lyne, Ottershaw, Longcross, Virginia Water and Thorpe, and this is part of my division. Introducing John Fury, who's the Deputy Leader of Surrey County Council and also the Runnymede Borough Councillor, which is the cause of all the problems. Colin Kemp is known as the lead member for Place, which includes highways, environment and all the stuff that goes with the place. And he's also a working Borough Councillor and Deputy Leader, I understand. So let me recap the purpose of this evening's meeting. This meeting is not, and I repeat not, to discuss, debate the numerous views, good or bad, on the latest version of the Runnymede Borough Council Local Plan. That comes later. Your comments and views and concerns on the Runnymede Local Plan should be known to the planning inspector when the time becomes available. That is the opportunity that you will have to submit your objections, comments, or whatever the support, whatever you need to do at that point, and they will all be taken into account. So the purpose of this meeting, therefore, is to understand the current thinking of the Runnymede Borough, behind the inclusion in their local plan of the A320 and the traffic issues resulting from the expansion of all the sort of industries around here, including the Otter roundabout. The views have been taken from the Runnymede Local Plan and the Traffic Environmental Impact Study, and they do not necessarily reflect the views of Surrey Highways, who are still considering what options are available. A number of residents have also brought forward their ideas, and no doubt will be considered in this exercise going forward. John will set out how the proposal in Runymede's local plan is being moved on, and Colin, as Cabinet Member for Highways, will add his views. I might point out at this time that there might not be complete alignment in their views on a solution, but finding a solution is a must if this area is not to grind to a complete halt, given all the development that's proposed, but forgetting the development, the current traffic in this area is a nightmare. Having contributed to the hall, over the rebuilding and refurbishment of this hall over the last 9 years since I've been County Council, I would be very hesitant to be accepting of anything that deters the continued success of this hall, and that I will certainly and I will be watching it very carefully, and through my normal contacts through the Ottershaw Society, I will update him on a regular basis. I wish to stress that no solution will be presented this evening, because there is none. To ensure we get through the meeting in good time, can I ask that when you stand and ask a question, I'll take them in order, but please stand up, make yourself known, and ensure that the audience can hear you. Please keep the questions to questions, no speeches. Right, and I remind you, it is not about the Runnymede local plan at this stage. So I'll now hand over to John, who will take you through his presentation.
Thanks very much, Mel, and I would also like to welcome you. Only once before have I addressed a residents' meeting, and that numbered 140, and I think you've topped that. And that's the way we should be talking together. First of all, Mel, there's a couple of errors that I would like to point out. I am a Runnymede Borough Councillor. I'm not here to defend the Runnymede Local Plan or to discuss it. I'm here on behalf of Surrey. Within Surrey, the background to the whole issue of the A320 came about as follows, and my introductions will cover the route that we will move forward on and the things that we will have to do, which will involve the community as we go forward in hopefully getting the money to unlock the issues that are here.
But you represent both councils. You are a Runnymede Borough Council.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. So you are part of the local plan. You vote the local plan through, or
Yes.
before you do it.
I'm here.
So you approve the local plan.
Right. I think we've established that. I said I'm a Runnymede Borough Councillor. I was part of the council meeting that approved the local plan. Okay.
But sorry. I think there's an important point there. Yeah. You suggested, well, I took away that you're saying you're nothing to do with Runnymede. Runnymede voted this through. You stood and gave the residents a big speech about how fantastic the plan was and how the feasibility study was great. We've got you on video. It's on YouTube. Yeah. So where do you stand on this?
Well, first of all, I started off by saying this is a Surrey County Council meeting. It is not a Runnymede Borough Council meeting, and that's the situation.
But where do you, Councillor Councillor Fury, stand on this issue? You can't just say, oh, I don't have that hat today, I'll have this other hat on.
Right, I'll tell you exactly where I stand. There are issues in and around the county. I'm involved in attempting to solve them. I'm part of that team, and I'm part of the opportunity to actually make it better for all of us. That comes first. Secondly, I'm also a Runnymede Borough Councillor, and I am concerned about what is happening within Runnymede. I can wear both hats equally well. If I may continue.
So, sorry, you didn't,
no, I'm sorry.
question.
I'm not allowing a discussion as to what I'm speaking. I've told you, I'm speaking on behalf of
where do you stand
Surrey
on
County Council.
Otter roundabout is the question.
Shall I continue, or shall we have a private discussion here? Thank you. The background to the A320 study was, it was proposed by Surrey Heath Borough Council, Woking Borough Council, and Runnymede Borough Council. They paid for it, they commissioned it, and therefore it was delivered. Before it can become a public document, it has to be signed off by Highways, because they do not have the authority to do so. I signed that plan off as a feasibility study, which could be something that we would look at going forward. How Runnymede used it at that point is not for me to comment on tonight, so I'm not going to. Okay, moving on from there. The function of Surrey County Council Highways is to consider the economic vitality of the county in the first instance, to prepare for and provide highways and infrastructure throughout the county as developments come to planning, and also to ensure that not only roads are fit for purpose within and around the county, but also that education is serviced as well, and health and well-being. As you will know, government has stopped funding local authorities to a very large degree. So we have to work through committees. And the major committee, Scott, could you move on to the next one, please? No, we've done that bit. Okay, this is the major committee. It has not yet been legislated for, but we have been working for a year with this plan through a committee which involves all of the county councils concerned, all of the boroughs and districts concerned, who do not attend, but have two people representing their views as we move forward. Transport for the South East considers the whole structure of infrastructure for the South East of England. Government have just provided us with £1 million to provide the admin back, and also to start using some of that money to get some idea of what we are about to do. So we're moving forward. To put it into context, the next one please. That's the area we're concerned with. Now you're part of that area, but you're not the whole of the area. Each of the areas within that diagram, within that map, will have similar issues and problems that you are going to face in the future. Alongside that, there is also the major road networks. This is the Department of Transport. And what we insisted as local government was that the money they're spending on highways is massive. But what they're not spending the money on is how to get in and onto that highway and to get off it and to be able to move freely. Equally, where we live, the issue is also heavily hit us when there is an issue on the M25 and our local roads get absolutely crushed. Congestion, housing and delivering economic growth, that's one of the issues we have to address. It's not going to go away, it has to be looked at and hopefully put in place. Support the strategic road network and all road users. You pay your road tax, and we won't discuss where the money goes, but funding now has to come through new national roads funds. At the moment, nothing is coming through, but there are areas that we are looking at more deeply. The next slide is, next one's got that one. That's really the whole basis of the thing. To get people on main roads, off local roads, and get them to their destinations quicker and faster. And that's the issue that we're looking forward to solving. As we look forward to the future, the money that we can get comes in funding streams in consultation with boroughs and districts. But in essence, it's the county councils who are the highway authority, and in the main, we promote and put together the schemes that we feel are absolutely necessary. We have a priority list of schemes throughout the county, which interact and connect with the other counties that we join up with. Now, moving on to the A320, the scheme alternatives are as follows. Do nothing. This is not viable because it's not going to go away. If you go through the Ottershaw roundabout in the morning towards Chobham, you will not get to Chobham without passing stationary cars queuing to come into Ottershaw. To connect with the motorways, go to Staines, go to Woking, that is getting worse and it's going beyond Chobham currently. There is growth in this corridor. All of the boroughs that I've spoken about have had local plans either in place, signed off, or in the process of examination. Most of those will go through. The only difference I think that might happen is the number of houses that the government want us to build will increase. At the same time, committed large developments are continuing. In the past, those large developments were required to pay a sum of money to compensate the local infrastructure. That has changed because the government changed the rules. We now have to determine a new development as to how much SIL money, community infrastructure levy, it throws off. However, the government also increased the number of people who could plug into that. 25% goes to community groups, particularly those with a neighbourhood plan. 5% goes for admin to the boroughs and districts, would you believe, which is not helpful to anybody. 70% is spread between education, health and well-being, and roads. So it's a declining pool. If we have less development, there'll be less money. Infill development will continue. That is the best, most positive way that every borough and district would like to develop houses. Infill. But it's not going to be enough. Developments on the border of Surrey, which will use this route, the A320, will continue to build. And you will not be able to influence those. So the intention throughout all of this is to get the best outcome for you and for the county.
Best outcome for us. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with you. The other side of this coin, obviously, is do something. There has been a feasibility study which says if you enlarge the junction to accommodate the traffic flow associated with growth, it will solve the problem.
It'll attract more cars. People will hear the roads work properly.
Okay, but reflect. Something has to be done. If that stays, I'm sorry, you can ask questions at the end, please.
Do you believe that, what you just said there?
Can I come back to that? Okay. Enlarged junction to accommodate traffic flow associated with growth. It's not going to go away. Ultimately, if it doesn't get sorted, it's going to get worse. And what is a local community will feel the effect of it, as you appear to think you do now. I'll come back to that.
Without asking a question, a statement, if you enlarge the junction without widening any of the roads going in and out, there is absolutely no way that it's going to take the traffic. The roads aren't wide enough to allow any junction like that.
Okay, when you have a feasibility study, it has a focus. The focus of the feasibility study was from McLaren's through Ottershaw, down to past St. Peter's, round into Chertsey, having gone over the railway bridge, past Salesians. At the same time, the issue of Junction 11 on the M25 is an issue. Currently, Highways England are very concerned and have spoken to us about it as the highway authority in the county on the basis that the backups are beginning to be troublesome. Melview travels into County Hall on a regular basis. He still comes up along the M25 and then hits the slip road to get onto the A3. That's what's happening on Junction 11. And the more it grows, the more danger there is on the M25. And we all know what the traffic is like on the M25. The only outline layout is a feasible study that you have seen. And regrettably, it was taken as read, solid, gospel, that it was going to happen. The best point for you to focus on is this: the layout has not been tested in the strategic model. It was a feasibility study which was commissioned by 3 borough councils in isolation, signed off by Surrey Highways in the form of me. I signed it off, but I signed it off on the basis that it was a draft.
But it underpins the entire local plan. How does that make sense?
Can we hold these till the end? Otherwise, we'll get totally disrupted. Let him finish his
Yeah, but
presentation. I understand your problem.
with all due respect, he's making statements that, you know,
Make a note and then you can challenge him afterwards, please.
Moving on. The delivery stages are as follows. We complete, Surrey goes ahead and does its own transport study. We look at a pre-feasibility design. We move to a full feasibility design and we produce a business case which goes to government. The government have to see that there is a ratio of success value to money, value to cost of at least 2 to 1. We would expect to be able to produce 4 to 1. That would mean we would get a green light from government and the thing would be funded. Detailed design, when we get to that point, includes detailed consultation with you, with the boroughs, with everybody who is regarded as a consultancy that we need to speak to before we go to final contract assignment.
Why didn't that take place before that plan was?
Sorry, can you just hold?
Draft plan.
It's a feasibility study.
Yeah, but why wasn't the consultation taking place with the people that lived there beforehand? Why have we got to? Why have we got to all turn up like this and write out hundreds of letters of complaint or objection or representation because we haven't been listened to, because we haven't even been, our questions haven't even been answered beforehand?
Let's just understand one thing. I did not sign off the study as being a firm, positive thing that was going to happen. You're asking the wrong person. If you have an issue with this, as Mel has indicated, it's in the local plan. Be your own representatives. Make your point there. Because if the local plan is found unsound, then it'll have to start again. Now, also remember that as residents, there will be a cost of at least 2 million to you through your council tax. I say that because we often forget that somebody pays for this. Could I have the next one, please, Stuart? Scott. What stage are we at? It's important to understand this. This is a very early stage and no schemes have been agreed. I'll repeat that. No schemes have been agreed by the highways of Surrey or anybody else. No schemes. Any proposed schemes will need to be tested to show benefits to secure funding. I've already indicated that there is a high bar, Department for Transport, before they give us your precious money. We have to make sure that the case is watertight and produces value for the cost. At least 2 to 1, but more likely to be nearer 4 to 1. A business case started a month ago. The preparation of a business case started a month ago. Colin, I'd like to speak to that afterwards. The reason that the A320 came forward very quickly is that the other funding streams that I go to, Colin goes to as well, which is the local economic partnership, which is based between Hampshire and Surrey. I sit on the board in the program management group. Colin sits on the program management group. The program management group assesses every bid and either progresses it to the main board or kills it at that point. One of the other areas that came into being recently was the Housing Infrastructure Fund that you could bid for. That's a very interesting one because it allows each bid to bid for up to £250 million. I put in 5 bids on behalf of the county. 4 of them were accepted. That's quite unusual. I expected to get 1, I got 4. When I looked at the 5 we had, the only one that we had any work starting on was the A320. That's why county have stepped in, using the A320 as our first bid. We have to put in a bid, an opening bid, by spring 2019. We were asked to put it in by September, and we said we can't do it. We haven't done the work yet. The second date that was offered to us was December, and we said we will not have the work complete. So we're going in March of next year. Transport improvements will require a 5-part DFT business case, and it's got to be compatible with the Treasury Green Book. That makes it difficult because the Green Book requires you to put in a bias, and the bias they look at is an extra 50% on top, which really drives the price up. The River Thames scheme has been put in at 35% bias. That's 240 million, and we can't complete it because we haven't got the money, and how much are we short? 240 million. It's a ridiculous situation to find yourself in. There has to be high-level consultation. And I think that the community is part of that high-level consultation. If we get a successful business case with a detailed design, we would commence with more detailed consultation. So if we put this in March, it'll be a year before we move to the second part of the business case. It'll be a further year before it's signed off and the money made available. Another 6 months to contract, and in 5 or 6 years' time, this may be delivered.
Does that mean there's no development before that then?
Can we just move on to we're nearly there. Okay, and I'm going to put your nemesis up at the end. Potential impact and mitigation. Visual intrusion. Very easy, planting and landscaping. Noise. Noise bands, acoustic fencing, double glazing. The major one, relocation of existing facilities, if possible, for example, parking. Okay? So, it is recognized that if you do something, it has an effect. It's a ripple effect. It affects other things and other people. All of those have to be considered as part of your business case. It would be easy if we had enough money to throw at land purchasing and do it that way. It's just not possible because we haven't got the money. We would look to do it through a development, but at the moment that's not possible. So that's the case, that's the background. I don't believe you understood that fully. And I come back to it going into the Runnymede Local Plan. It was considered by the planning department, by the whole council who voted it on, that it should be part of the local plan. That was their decision, I was part of it, and I'll stand by it. Because I understood that by putting it in the plan doesn't mean it's going to happen at all.
So it's a lie. Why you put that to expect if it's not going to happen?
Right, there it is. That's what we're here to talk about. But I'm going to say one thing to you. Sensible questions, and don't shout, please. My colleague would like to say something.
Trying to think where to start. Right, okay. First of all, I'll talk about local plans and not the Runnymede one. I'm going to talk about it from a working point of view. A local plan is an indication of interest. It's not, this is what's going to happen. The local plan for Woking was put in place in 2013. Some of the sites that were brought forward were already being done for, we've used for other things. So a plan is an outline idea, and it gives the planning department protection against other developers coming in on Greenbelt. The highways study that went forward as part of your local plan, as part of the Runnymede local plan has been put into the document, what they did was look at the A320 and they looked at the pinch points along it and came up with possible ideas or possible suggestions that could alleviate it. We can't do that because everything we do, we can't look at a junction. When we do anything, we have to understand the ramifications of the area and everything that comes into it. So if we looked at this roundabout, like a lady said here, we would need to understand the roads coming into it, the next junctions along, and we would traffic model. There are experts that do this. There are people that traffic model the area to understand the ramifications of what we're trying to do. If you look at what that's up there now, your nemesis as John calls it, the chances are it will look nothing like that. Actually, it could be, and one of your residents has already given me a nice little diagram, could actually be a set of traffic lights. Could be completely different, because until we understand, what happens with traffic modelling you find is you do a roundabout, a mini roundabout, and you enlarge it slightly, which gives you a better loading onto the junction. Eventually you come to a saturation point for a roundabout. Traffic lights is the next stage up. And then you look at what you can do about alleviation of pressure with little slip roads off to the side to do the junction. So there is so much, John has mentioned March. There is a lot of work to do before March. And there's probably close to £500,000 worth of work in bringing forward experts to understand the ramifications of this junction. Because we won't look at that, we'll look at the area. We'll look at the roads that feed up to the next roundabout. We'll look at what it does to Ottershaw village, how it feeds into it. So there's a whole bigger amount of work that goes into it from our point of view. And then the consultation will be, these are some thoughts that we have and what we will need to, what we feel makes the traffic work. How does that work with you? And I'm doing the same thing in lots of different areas throughout Surrey. I've been to lots of meetings like this. We're talking through with people who have said, well, that's a problem for me because it takes away this bit of green space, or we have that going on. So, okay, so we have to have a set of outcomes that we need to achieve, but actually we can tweak because we don't know the local area. I mean, I know this area really well because I only live down the road in Woking. But actually the engineers that put this together do it with traffic modelling. They don't know the local area. So they come to you, we put suggestions in, can we arrive at those outcomes slightly differently, but actually working with the local community and finding different ways to do it. And that's what we do. I was at a meeting just a week ago down in Frimley Green, where I'm having exactly the same conversation, but we're a lot further down the road. Actually, I'm trying to get the junction altered to meet what the local community wants, but still achieve what we need from a traffic modelling point of view. So there's lots of conversations. This is really when John said about tonight's meeting, I said, why are we talking about this? Because this is just a diagram. It's just an idea to support the local plan. This is not what's going to be delivered. There's nothing behind it, and that's what we need to do. And that's the work that we've currently starting to bring forward, and we will present that once the work comes forward.
If there's nothing behind it, who is that meant to tell lies to?
It's not telling lies. What it's doing is supporting a local...
Is it to the public here, or is it to central government or the inspector? What is the point in paying for something when there's nothing behind it?
Because it supports a local plan. That's what the borough did to support the local plan.
The local plan with lies. And your head of Runnymede Council, Nick Prescott, stood up and waved papers in people's faces at a previous meeting and said, this is fake news. Well, you're telling us it's fake news, but it wasn't produced by us, it was produced by Arcadia that was sanctioned by yourselves. So what's the point in that? Why is getting us to...
Yeah, sorry, can I just...
Who are you trying to lie against?
I don't think it's a question of lying. I think effectively, and I'm not a Runnymede Borough Council, so I stand subject to correction. But what I understand is that the local plan was put together and somebody decided they needed traffic impact assessments to go with the plan to support the potential developments that went through. They commissioned the study which was required to submit it to the planning inspector, and this is the report that came out. So the question, as I said earlier on, we're not here this evening to talk about the Runnymede plan. We're talking about basically where we are at the moment, which from what I can work out is basically Surrey County Council have to take ownership of the developments in association with the other 3 boroughs around the locality, and it stretches from the exits of the M25, Junction 11, through Silesian, up Holloway Hill, all the way through to Woking. And that study, and also up to Addleston, that study has got to be done properly in detail once this plan is approved by the planning inspector, if it is approved by the planning inspector. And that's why I prefaced my comments earlier on this evening to say, when the planning inspector calls for evidence, please make certain that you submit the evidence. Because if that evidence is not submitted, you run the risk that the plan will be approved by the inspector, and then there will be very little you can do about it because the borough will fall back on the issue it was approved by the planning inspector. So it's not a question of lies, it's a question of getting the document through Runnymede Borough Council approval into a planning inspector to meet a deadline. And that's as far as I can understand. And we all know that we've all got different opinions on the, on the ability of the plan to survive a planning inspection. We know that. I've got problems in my area, you've got problems in this area as well, and to a degree we're a little bit in line. But fundamentally the issue is when the planning inspector calls for evidence, we need to provide that evidence. Otherwise, as I say, I repeat, it will flow through, and then you have very little argument when the planning department in Runnymede Borough Council approves all these houses and then forces the Highways Agency to start looking at ways to get around it. So that's the motive of this plan. There's no lies and no bad intention. Runnymede decided that they needed a traffic impact assessment on the local plan in association with Surrey Heath because of their proposed development at the airport, and in association with Woking in their proposed development down in Martyrs Lane. And that is the reason why this was included in the plan. It is one draft, it is not a plan. As I said at the beginning, there is no solution at the moment as I stand here. Right, can I ask Sheila?
Can I just ask, amongst the people who live here are some very sensible alternative plans, not just back of the envelope, they have put in hours of work. Now, why can those plans not be considered alongside this at an early stage, not later on when the inspector calls for things, but from now? Please.
Is Michael Fresney in the hall?
Yes.
Hi, Michael. Michael will tell you that he came to see Mel and myself in County Hall. I believe it was about 10 days ago, Michael. And Michael presented a paper to us. I must say that 3/4 of it was about the local plan, but that was not what we were talking about. He came forward with a view as to how he could obviate the difficulty of the Ottershaw roundabout, and the outcome was that I said to Michael, I would have the traffic engineers who develop all these things look at it seriously, and we would get back to him. I did also say that it would not be an immediate priority, but most certainly within 4 to 6 weeks we'll go back to him and we'll critique his views, which is what I would expect our traffic engineers to do. That is some part of the process going forward. We are open for suggestions, but at this moment in time, you're looking at something that doesn't exist. We keep saying this to you. If you don't have to focus on that, if you want to do something entirely different, and I presume that Michael was the one who talked about the traffic lights and the 4 exits, that's exactly his scheme. Also, he's considered a link road. to take some pressure off the roundabout. So all of that has been good. And that has to be the way forward, in discussion, together, not just forcing something on you.
I have two questions, yourself and yourself next, and the lady next to you, and then the person at the back.
First, can I say, sorry, Alan Wakefield, local resident, Barnsley Wise. I also prepared and sent round to a number of councillors a suggestion back in May for a link road system or a bypass system. That doesn't seem to have been taken into account. I had no response to that. I'd like to offer that further forward.
Did you send it to county or did you send it to
I sent it to all, including probably one to Mel. I'd like it to go to you as well.
Thank you.
And I'd like to put a discussion on this. Second point is that solution that is being proposed up there or being indicated is obviously totally unfit for purpose, as most people involved.
Sorry, can you just say your name and make certain people hear you?
Yeah, my name's Abby. I liked your comment that you appreciate Brook Hall and all it does for the community. So many activities happen here. Where are people going to park to come into Brook Hall?
That has been my number one consideration when I've discussed it with Councillor Fury, is absolutely not to sacrifice that parking.
My second point is the suggestion, as I understand it, to have traffic lights up there instead of the major roundabout would also include a road going through from Chobham Road into Ether Hill Woods and coming out through the Memorial Park in Ottershaw. Now, to me, that is absolutely outrageous.
And there was a hand at the back there. Yes. Sorry.
Ottershaw. It seems to me that it would have been better if that map had never been put forward as a proposal. Because people took the view, including myself, that proposals can indicate the way in which you're thinking. So naturally, people thought, if we don't object to it, it'll be going through. So that's why you've got so much clamour. It should never have been put in the plan if you had no intention of doing it. Second point, which is more important, because it's past now, is where is the money going to come from for all this work? Because you've indicated, sir, already that there are problems with the financing, and I don't think it's going to happen.
Right. The money will come from the Homes Infrastructure Fund. Now, as I said during the course of my presentation, each bid can be as large as 250 million. You will know, if you've read the report, that the actual cost of the roadworks is about 42 million. But our view, and it's just a first look at it, to make it work, you'd have to buy land compulsorily, and that would push the price up to 100 million. But on that basis, with a target of 250 million, we're well within it. But I don't believe that it can be, it could be as high as that. We don't know. That's the issue. We don't know until we've actually done the detailed work that is required when you're doing a highway scheme.
Hi, my name's Anne. I live in Fox Hills Road, which has already got a difficult to get out either end, and anything to do with the motorways, and it's impossible to get home. Can I just compare this to trying to get a house built? You get building permission, which is what this is, and then you put in your plans and they won't allow it because you have to keep changing the plans to fit in with it. Is that the sort of thing that this is meant to show us? That this is the building but not the planning? No, fine, then I misunderstood that.
It's probably a stage before that. So sometimes when you go to planning for your home or extension, you go to a pre-planning application where you take some paperwork to the officers.
It used to be called building.
Okay, yeah, well, it's a pre. I mean, that's probably closer to it than even a sort of a planning application. It's just an indicative idea to cure a junction, not to cure an area.
That's what nobody was given to understand. No. That's why we're.
I understand that.
But by living in Fox Hills Road, I already had to cross to get over to the shops, to get to my doctor's surgery, roads that are really difficult. Whatever you put there, it's going to cut this village in half. And you cannot cut a village in half. I was born and brought up in a smaller village than this, and you just cannot cut a village in half. Please, please do not cut a village in half. I have written to you before.
Of course you couldn't and shouldn't destroy a village or allow or make it to the point that nobody can access one side to the other. It's like building a wall down the middle of the road, isn't it?
Yeah, we're not Trumps here.
I wish I thought of that before I answered the question. That would be part of the consultation. That would be part of the work that our officers would do.
Consultation with who?
With yourselves, with other partners. The consultation will be with Runnymede Borough Council as well. The consultation will include Surrey Heath Borough Council, and Woking Borough Council will also be included. We have to work together. You can't just do a 100-metre stretch of road and then provide nothing on either side.
You can't build 1,500 houses and get Cheltenham Road with all those cars coming through.
Okay, Foxhill Road is a problem. Everybody knows that. Yeah, and if you were to take, hang on, I'm beginning to get into dirty water here now.
Okay, I have a gentleman in the brown, and then yourself, and then there's, at the back there's two hands, so yourself.
I heard last week, this could just be a rumour, that the Christmas tree farm is being put up for redevelopment. I know the owners of the farm have offered it to Surrey County Council, and they asked local owners to put forward any land that they be willing to sell for redevelopment. I also heard last week that it could be a massive 3-stage programme, but if it was granted, developers have offered to pay for most of that roundabout.
Okay, there is nothing in writing. Consultations, no, this is...
Nothing in writing. That's why you've got such a huge roundabout.
Sorry. A developer would prefer you not to know what he's planning to do. Because it raises exactly the same issues that you've got in front of you here now. But I can categorically say right now, nobody's talking to Surrey County Council about it. Nobody is saying, do you want to buy it? I am aware of a proposal that could come forward, which would be the Christmas tree. However, most of you already know this. Runnymede has said categorically no. Now,
can I just interrupt there? The same family own Brook Hall Nurseries, which has now been sold to the developers. I think there's 260 or something houses that are being planned to go on there, or wherever it is. And it's the same family that owns Christmas tree farm. When the government approached, I think it was 2 years ago, lots of large local landowners, if they were willing to put their property, their land up for redevelopment, they were one of the people that put it forward, and it's being considered. Brook Hall Nurseries is going to probably start happening a lot quicker than what Whole Village thinks it is. Last week we had teams of guys up and through down the
hang on, you are...
with the other lights.
Yes.
What were they doing?
Going the whole length, excuse me, can you listen?
Yes.
Going the whole length of Brook Road, down Murray Road, up into Boundary Rights. Could you please tell us what those guys are doing?
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
No idea, but if you nominate somebody, I will come back to you and indicate whether or not we are aware of what is going on in terms of the surveying. Now, let me also say to you that if it is a private company working on behalf of a private company who commissioned it, we would not even be aware of it, even as the Highway Authority. They're not required to tell us. Equally, can you just tell me what you mean by government? Do you mean government? Do you mean county? Or do you mean...
Local council, government, or
right.
The proposals
Okay.
are being spoken about.
Right, the proposals are not in the public arena because the developer hasn't brought it into the public arena. He has, can I finish my answer? I know that they have had discussions with Runnymede Planning, but nothing has come of it, and they've been told categorically no, we would not accept or expect to allow a development on that site.
Final question, is this roundabout, this layout, purely down to the proposed gross owner of the development of a small semi-rural village. Is that why you're thinking of putting that in? Because if all the housing goes forward in the village and around the village that is being proposed, that's why you need that. And it's not really much to do with the present traffic situation, because that could be solved another way. This is all about the massive overdevelopment.
We're really getting into theory here, but understand one thing. This country is not downsizing. This country has a major problem in terms of providing houses for your children who want to get on the housing ladder and are unable to do so. That is because unless there are numbers of houses available, the price goes up. And as soon as the price goes up, they can't afford them.
But all these houses will be low-cost houses.
Sorry, then yourself, and then I have the two at the back and a lady at the back in the glass, and I'll come to you just now. Yes.
Thank you. You said about when evidence is called for, to submit evidence. So when about will that be, and how will we know? Because this meeting, most of us just found out through social media. How will we know when that evidence is called for?
Yeah. The initial business case will be ready for... Oh, the planning inspector. The planning inspector for this?
Yeah, for the local plan.
For the Renby Local Plan, I believe it's March, April of next year. But that's a movable feast because the government had a cut-off time of the 31st of March of this year, and 70% of the councils in the country had not put forward a local plan. So now they have 70-odd councils in line waiting to go through EIP, examination in public. It's going to take time, and I would think there will be slippage.
How will we know? I'm sorry, I just have one more
Sorry, as
question.
soon as I hear about it, I mean, Runnymede are going to publish it, that the planning inspector is
Where?
looking at it.
Where do they
I
publish?
imagine they'll put it on their website, in which case I'll keep an eye on it and advise straight away that it's there.
Okay.
There are Runnymede councillors here, and they will inform anybody who wishes.
We're very happy to.
Okay, well, you'll have to watch it. Yeah.
And we can work with Ottershaw Society, and all the councillors can inform.
Okay, and
Not a problem.
when in the next 5 years, when would the traffic modeling be expected to take place? If everything just kept moving forward, about when would you expect a traffic modeling?
Right, okay. The housing infrastructure bid, which is what we are currently working on to bid, nothing to do with the local plan. This is the housing infrastructure bid which John mentioned, the HIF bid. We put in 5, we expected 1 to come back. They've given us 4 to work up. We've now got to find the money and the resource to actually work those 4 up. We will put in those 4. The latest we apparently at the moment can put them in is March. We're hoping that's going to get extended because I don't think we're going to get work on all 4 of them done.
One of them will go through at least in March.
I'll tell you what the 4 is. So there is the A320, the other side of Victoria Arch in Woking, so the south side of Woking. There's this one here. There is one in Guildford around the Slyfield area, and there's one down on the A22. So that's the 4 we are currently working on. When we put the 4 into government, which, as I say, March, middle of part of next year, that then goes for another whole process, which will probably take a year or so. At that point, they will come and take it to the next stage. So they might come back to us and give us none. They might come back and only give us 1. And they will indicate which one it is. It's not our decision, it'll be their decision. When that comes forward, we then do a whole nother lot of work to take it to the next level. So like we were talking about with planning and pre-planning, and then taking it to the next level and get another lot of detail put into it, then we will do a whole nother lot of work and to take that forward before the money's released. So the earliest we'll know for any sort of definite before we're going to get some money released, before we consult on it, is probably at the very earliest, is probably early 2020, I would have thought. The very earliest, and that could be well stretched depending what goes on. So, but the idea of housing infrastructure fund, to answer a question that came out, it is to enable housing. We're between a rock and a hard place. I'm having the same conversations with my own residents in Woking, between a rock and a hard place about how we do development. We've got targets we need to meet. As a highway authority, we need to understand infrastructure and release things. Everyone's got, if we go back to the 70s when I was just started driving, every family had 1 car, maybe 2. Everyone's got 3 and 4. The housing is getting more condensed. There's so many more cars on the road. Put extra housing mix into that. We then got the whole issue. So that's what we're trying to address and keep on top of. And one doesn't come without the other. It's chicken and egg scenario.
How many houses across the 4 developments is that?
Just
please?
hold on a minute. I have these two gentlemen at the back there. That's-
Same thing, remember the science roundabout? What they proposed to do with the ambulance station? How on earth are they going to get in and out of it? Have you looked at it?
Yeah, I have, and that doesn't work for Woking. I've noticed, first thing I noticed.
So why waste the money? And the slip road. The slip road's not going to work.
The whole intention is to look at the whole. Now that would include the road from Ottershaw roundabout down to Junction 5 and St Peter's Hospital. There are also problems on the office development that is beside St Peter's and the extra houses that are going in beside St Peter's. So the ambulance station may or may not stay, but if it has to go, a place equivalent and as enabling to get them out on the highway to save lives will have to be provided. If we take your car park, it would have to be provided. By the way, just to help you out, Surrey County Council owns the car park. Just thought I'd say that.
Behind you. Sorry.
With a slight alteration, you couldn't get in and out of the ambulance.
Yeah, I think effectively you understand that this is...
Nobody likes the roundabout, at least do something.
No, I understand. I mean that camp as well. But at the end of the day, it is done, I understand, for Runnymede to get the plan to the planning inspector in time for an inspection. How it got there, I have no idea. The person behind you.
David Crease from Woodham, infiltrator. This whole issue is being created because of the fact that Ottershaw on Runnymede, this is on the edge of Runnymede, we're also having to pick up the Thames and the problems created by Surrey Heath, Fair Oaks, and then obviously Woking, problems from Woking, all coming through here. If you improve roads, they attract traffic. Naturally, I'm thinking, just leave it alone as it is. And the traffic will have to find other routes.
That's an alternative. The lady in the back there has been waiting patiently.
Thank you very much, Mel, for letting me speak. Catherine Brunton Green from Wara. I just wanted to inform the meeting that the recent guys with their theodolites, etc., that have been surveying on the main roundabout down the A320 through the village are a company called Rich Borough Developments, and Rich Borough Developments are very interested in developing Morris Mandry's land. They have a history of aggressively developing green belt also. So if you wanted to do some research on Rich Borough Developments, do have a look and investigate them, because they're here, they are surveying right the way through the village.
Okay.
And more building, and we've already got 8,900 homes planned within a 3-mile radius. More building, more houses will inform any traffic model. So anything like that will be informed by increased building.
Thank you very much. Jim, you were next.
Okay, so we know that the local plan is going to the inspector probably in March of next year. March next year, you said. And yet we won't know if the funding's available for the improvements until 2020, possibly. Will there be any development from the local plan allowed to start before the A320 is improved?
Very short answer, no.
Excellent, thank you.
Yourself?
Can you record that?
Yes, it's recorded.
Mr. Fisher, sorry.
The question.
Will there be any development? Will there be any development before the A320 has been approved? deflating now.
Boy, am I glad I'm just the cabinet member for adult social care.
Quite question, Ottershaw. 2 points. This is all about highways and Surrey County Council, and it's not a meeting on a local plan, but you can't divide the two. Simply, an inspector has been appointed, was appointed last week to carry out the local plan consideration. No date has been established, and it could be as late as March, but having appointed an inspector, I would think it's probably likely to be earlier. A local plan inspector will not consider a local plan sound unless the infrastructure has been considered. Runnymede Borough Council did nothing about looking at the infrastructure of highways, health, education before coming out with the allocations and the local plan. And it's only at the very last minute that suddenly they realised that they needed a transport study, or else they would have nothing for consideration of the local plan. And the inspector would throw it out.
Well, let's
and
hope.
Therefore, you know,
I need to interrupt you because
the local plan at an inspection cannot deliver housing unless there are satisfactory highway solutions. And Surrey County Council now, as you explained to me quite properly and said, yeah, fine, that's not going to come out until early next year. So what's going to happen in the consultation? And the consultation for the local plan inquiry is closed at the 31st of June. The only people who can speak and make further representation of the local plan inquiry are those who at that time made application for a speaking place. And if you haven't done that, and I haven't, so I can't stand up and speak at it, the inspector will only consider the representations made at the for the local plan at that closure date imposed by Runnymede, which was the 31st of June. Is that not so?
I have no idea.
Yes, it is. You have to register.
We must repeat again, the local plan is not for discussion this evening. It's not their meeting, it's Surrey County Council's meeting. And Michael is quite right. Whatever is in the local plan may never happen. Colin's already made a point of saying that. It's there to inform the residents and all consultant parties as to what Runnymede, Surrey Heat and Woking could propose. It is open for change. And quite frankly, it will change as you move forward. You may be told Runnymede may be told you haven't put enough houses on. Go away and do it again. It's not going to go away, and this is the point. This country is growing. More and more people are living in it. More and more people are having children. There are more and more cars on the road. It has to be catered for, because that's what government's about.
But at some point, it has to be stopped. At some point, you have to say, there's panic.
Sorry, would you mind giving the courtesy to the other residents who've got other things to say? They put their hand up before you. You've had more than your fair share at the moment. As a local borough councillor, you should know the process.
When did you hear spouted rise? Can I just say, why aren't they if this is supposed to be about housing, why aren't they converting local offices that have been sitting empty for God knows how long, that the infrastructure's already there, into flats? And if this is about housing people now, these houses aren't going to, I'll be forfeit, I'm not going to sit for both of it, but anyway, this isn't about housing now, this is so long term. You keep telling us it's about housing, but these people need housing now, there's no immediate sort of plan for it, sorry.
Runnymede have recently bought 3 office blocks and they're turning them into housing. Now, equally, as well as being deputy leader, I'm also the guy who's supposed to be leading economic viability of the county. And I am now concerned because so many of the boroughs and districts are turning offices into flats. Because you can't lose one without, making an effect somewhere. It's, you hit something there, there's a ricochet over there, ripples go out. So what local government have to do is to consider all ends of the chain.
I have the gentleman at the back of the door, and then I'll come to the lady in front.
Okay, Mick Wave, I'm an Ottershaw resident. I've got a little logistical problem at present. Obviously, we're all here for emails, I'm sure you gentlemen expected that tonight. But at present, we're living in the land of Narnia on the screen. what point do we come into the land of Ottershaw, and how many proposals and recommendations must we go through? Otherwise, this will become a smokescreen that we're looking at different things at different times. And politicians are very good at throwing too much information at people and covering something hidden up in the background. How do we know when this is an inherent linked plan with everything else?
Right. There's a process we have to follow, and it's annoying from our point of view. The same as it for yours. It's saying you do your house insurance and they want to know how many times you go on holiday and how many times you visit the doctors. They ask lots of stupid questions. We have to go through that process. The process is that boroughs and districts will get targets around housing numbers. They have to form a local plan how to deliver that. If they don't have a local plan how to deliver that, any developer can come in, bring up a bit of green belt. The government will overturn any planning authority because they haven't got a plan. Happened in Guildford with all the conversations going on in Ripley and the airport down there. They haven't got a plan. They couldn't defend against the developer. A plan puts in place the defence. So you say, I'm to deliver my housing numbers. This is where I anticipate doing that. For any of those plans to come forward, there will be further work to understand the infrastructure around what's needed, and the planning authority will do that along with the highways authority. The developer will have, so if the housing infrastructure bid for this junction doesn't go forward, this junction, nothing happens to it, someone comes forward with a planning proposal for houses wherever they are, whether they're Surrey Heath, Woking or in Runnymede, as part of that planning process for that development, again, the infrastructure and highways will be looked at. They will have to develop that and pay for it to allow their planning to go through. So there's a staged progress that you need to get, it will go through, and the questions will get asked. There's all sorts of things going on here. There's the set process will need to be worked through, and the questions, all the different things. You will get consulted as part of the local plan going forward. That will then sit on a shelf to aid what's going forward. I mean, and I'm going to go back to Woking. I'm sorry that I'm referring to Woking, but it's what I know. If you look at what's in our plan, which was brought out in 2013 and 14, a lot of the stuff that was in there hasn't been developed, but actually we're developing other stuff to try and alleviate using some of that green belt. So a local plan is a defence mechanism and is an idea, but it's not the end. This is not what we're going to do. It is then up to the planning authority, along with consultation with the residents, to try and decide a better way forward.
So from the infinite wisdom we have from you three gentlemen at the front, because you've been involved in these things before, how many consultations as a group of a community here will we have to face?
You have a consultation on the local plan. You will then have a consultation on the individual plannings. If they're refused, they go to an inspectorate. You will then get another consultation. This country loves consultations, but actually what's missing, and I do agree with you on some of this, sometimes a consultation isn't a conversation, and sometimes that is what we do as local members, and your local councillors that are here are part of that conversation to take your views forward, holding public meetings like this to understand the local feelings on what's going on. We're not going to please all the people all the time, but we need to take them into consideration.
When would you anticipate our next public meeting will be then?
When we've got something to bring.
As I indicated, the earliest opportunity we will have to bring forward the outline first case to government will be in March. Now, that will be a very brief outline of what we would expect to look at more seriously and in more depth. I would suggest that after that first case has been signed off, allowing us to go on to the second phase, that would be a time I would expect, if you want, to bring it back to you for consideration. Because it will have the outline of what government has said, yes, we can see that, so here's the money, off you go and do it. But before you do it, I'll bring it back. And so will the other people who are sitting in this room who are councillors or connected in any way.
Sorry, I forgot you.
Thank you. I'm Mary Morgan. I'm just a local resident. I'm a little person. Most of this I don't understand. And I just want to make some comments. I am very pleased that the lady down there said about the theodolite men, because I asked them and they said they were doing it on behalf of Surrey County Council. So, we've all got to get on their case. The second thing is that at the beginning of this meeting, you said that this was also all about improving our well-being and giving us, you know, what that, it doesn't. So what is happening is that we know, whether it's in our lifetime, that Addleston, Ottershaw, Weybridge, Woking, Fox Hills, all these areas will become one great big suburbia. All of the villages will be gone. All of them, this is my passion, and we haven't mentioned this once. All of our wildlife, all of our green spaces, and that is what gives us our well-being. All these consultations and things, I don't understand. I haven't understood a lot of what you said there, but I tell you that I could cry at what is happening.
I refer to health and well-being when a developer gets approval to deliver something, he has to pay a charge which is broken down in a number of ways. One of those ways is health and well-being. That was the only point I made.
Okay, I had a lady at the back there, and then I'm coming to the gentleman at the door that raised a question.
Yeah,
number 2, number 3, and number 4.
Sorry, that's my wife. Her voice is very good.
Are you going together or separately?
Flats. Where are the flats?
Okay, in the meantime, I'll go
Where
to...
are the office blocks that are being turned into residence houses? Is my missus' question.
Sorry?
Where are the flats, the office blocks that have been made?
I have no idea. It's a Runnymede issue, so
okay, and
I
if
can't
I could
talk
just,
about that.
I'll finish, right?
And 2 in Egham.
X thousand houses comes a massive amount of families. I gather you've thought about schools, doctors, all of that. That's all in your plan. You know, we'd all like to know where the next school's going to just pop up.
Okay. All right, and then I heard yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Yourself then.
You mentioned that Woking has a local plan, I think, at the moment, and some of the green belt is likely to be saved. Can somebody answer, if the Runnymede local plan goes through with all the pieces of green belt that are going to be sacrificed in it, has there ever, in Woking or in Runnymede, ever been any of that green belt reinstated, green belt land that's been sacrificed, going back into the green belt afterwards? Has that ever happened? Did you understand?
Yeah, there has. In Longcross North, the Longcross North development, they had to find what they call SANGS. SANGS. And they have done that, and that's on the border of Longcross Road and Kidsmead Lane. That's been set aside as an alternative for the sacrifice of the green belt.
So a supplementary question then, if a large area of land which is currently in the green belt, is in the local plan and the inspector approves it to go ahead, and it's adopted by Runnymede, could any of that go back into the green belt?
Yes.
And there will be no penalty to pay it, that outline planning permission. If you rescind that, a lot of money has to be paid. So having your green belt land taken out of the green belt as a result of the local plan doesn't give you any right to sell that land on at an inflated price.
The point that Mel has made is that in Longcross there was a requirement for Greenbelt to be put in place to the Greenbelt they were going to be taking over if they got their plannings through. So they bought a very large area next to the development which went as SANGS. Now the SANGS is simply to retain the Greenbelt.
It was already in the green belt.
No, this particular one was a working farm, which isn't green belt. It's rated as something different.
In the green belt?
At the moment, Hannah, I'll come back to you.
My name is Mr. Colorado, and I live a little further up in Chertsey, in Green Lane, where we're having a similar issue. But no mention has been made of environmental following this lady's comment, health and well-being. You have all these experts on the roads and engineers. I believe already Runnymede was listed recently as being one of the counties or boroughs which was the environmental issues were high, with Heathrow, the M25. Now, you've not mentioned any of you about the environment, pollution, and are there any of these experts actually logging any of this?
Yes.
The very short answer is yes. Runnymede contributed to the overall air quality study that decided where things were really bad. The biggest area of concern is by the railway crossings, because the majority of people sit there in the cars churning out fumes. Those are the bigger ones. Staines has got an area of concern, mostly throughout Staines and the surrounding areas. So it is something that's considered, and it is part of the overall drive by all of the boroughs, not just the 3 boroughs that surround us, but the whole of the county is looking at air quality. What you can do about it is another matter.
I have that gentleman at the back there, and then I have Don.
You say the fireman of the roundabout or whatever it might be won't happen without the information collated by the traffic information analysis and so forth. When are they going to start that? And how long are they going to do it for? And are the results from them going to be available to us, the public?
As I said earlier on, so there will be some general outcomes that we would need to achieve.
No, just answer the question.
I didn't hear the beginning of the question. You asked about how long will it take to do the traffic modelling. So the traffic modelling will be done.
When will it start? How long will it be for? And the results from them, will that be available to the public?
I would hope, but well,
Yes or no?
well, no, because it's not a simple yes or no answer, because actually there's different, as I said earlier on, there are certain amounts of information we need to pull together before March to get the bid in, and then we would need to do further work after that if we're through to the next round.
You said, quote unquote, the final model will not be approved before the results or analysis is done from the traffic analysis.
Correct.
Developers.
Yep.
Okay.
Not from the developers, from Surrey.
Okay. So are those results going to be available to the public
Yes.
prior to that?
Is that the answer?
Yeah, it was a simple yes or no question.
Don at the back, and then I have a question from outside.
I'll give you the microphone.
Don White from Lyme. One of the developments that has already been approved is Longcross Garden Village. Can I ask, which has an impact on this area, going 320, can I ask what highways improvements have been put in place for those 1,700 dwellings that are going to be built there?
None.
Don, there's no plan that's been approved for Longcross at this stage. Everything's an outline state as far as I'm aware.
The north side has been approved, and as you are aware, has been built out. There is no planning application being put in as yet for the southern side, which is the largest part. There's 250 on the north already built. There's a further 1,250 to 1,300 to go in for planning on the south side of the motorway. That is not in yet. It is expected, but it's not been actually decided upon by the planning committee.
So, it's quite a high-profile announcement by the government that it was going ahead. So there's been no forward planning to accommodate that additional traffic.
You can't forward plan until you know the scope of the development and what it needs to assuage it, if you can. Now, as soon as that goes in, can I just assure you that there has been an outline infrastructure study done on that area, but until it comes into planning, it's not worthwhile looking at. As soon as it comes into planning, it will be applied, not by Runnymede Borough Council. Highways people in Surrey will be the ones who sign it off.
We're going outside now.
I'm not sure if I should give him the mic, because I asked for a pint and he hasn't got me one yet.
I'll try a pint next, thanks. You've emphasised quite a lot the degree of uncertainty in these plans, how individual items could change extensively and so forth. It would actually be useful for us to make comments on them if we actually knew the boundaries of those uncertainties, which things were more probable, which things were less probable, how far you might move things and so forth. So a degree of knowledge of the flexibility in diagrams and so on would be very helpful for us to comment.
So we are at the stage the first thing we need to do is get a baseline. So we need to understand the traffic movements now. There is some work on that already, but we need to just make sure that's up to date. We will then talk about the local plans and what possible developments could come in. We will also look at, I think it's 10 years of increase based on expert opinion about increasing the amount of traffic that is liable to be around. That will give us what we're trying to achieve. Then we will look at how we're going to achieve that level of traffic movement. So that's the sort of process. There's no drawing of what that's going to possibly look like until we understand what we need to achieve, what our goals are, and what traffic movements we need to get through an area. And as I say, and that's a wider area. That's not just the roundabout. So that is looking at all the roads off.
Hannah, I have Hannah and the person behind him in the...
Hannah Lane, with reference to Deira Long Cross South, this week the consultants have actually put out emails to various residents groups. They're actually going to set up a steering committee to consider the planning application about to come in. So they are actually starting to consult. If anyone wants details, I'm sure I can give them.
Okay, and then I have the gentleman at the back and this lady.
Dominic O'Carroll. My understanding for the Long Cross development on that roundabout, the turning by Kirklands, there's meant to be a slip road built to improve the traffic flow going down there. That was on their plans when they had their consultation over in their offices. So that should be laid down and should be, in my belief, already moving forward. The other thing I've got great concerns about was raised down here. The other roads around the area, it's a nightmare at the moment just trying to get past McLarens, for an hour or two in the day. What consideration is being given to joining up all these bits and pieces? That in splendid isolation is great, but we haven't been told anything to do with the surrounding area. When do we get that? When do we get that?
And that's exactly what we need to do, and that's what I was talking about. We need to look at the whole area. The McLaren issue is another one because I've been involved in that because that's actually my patch. On the edge of it, and that's to do with their shift work patterns and the trouble they're causing during the day. But the whole, as I say, we need to understand, there's no point in moving the traffic from this roundabout and causing a problem down there. We need to understand the traffic flows of an area, and that's what, I'm not the expert, I'm not a highways engineer, but that's what my guys bring forward.
But when do we get that?
They would need to have an understanding of that before, if they're going to get this housing infrastructure bid in by March, they would need to have an understanding of that to actually formulate something to put forward, and that will be available, and we can bring that back, as John said. If I've still got a job, because I haven't let out too much information, I'll happily come back and talk about that then.
Sorry.
And it's a very busy road, and the lorries that go by, the noise is terrible, especially at night when they start coming at 3. But the question I want to ask is, has there been a pollution along Guildford Road, a test of pollution along Guildford Road? Because busy times, when I've walked dark, you can taste the exhaust fumes.
I think I've just been handed a rugby ball. Because I had conversations about this issue about 2-3 years ago, and the amount of highways, HGVs that were running through at that time in the morning. They do so obviously because the roads are empty. It suits them. We can't stop them. The highways are open to anybody who's paid their road license and is insured to be on our roads. Throughout this evening, a lot of the people have been saying, when will we know about this? When will we know about that? Can I make a suggestion? That through the Ottershaw Society, and I would strongly suggest that David McPhee and Malcolm be part of it, put together a small committee, no more than 12, because if you get more than 12 you'll have a room like this. And they can be your conduit, and I will promise to keep you informed as to how this is going along. More importantly, your divisional member will depend on being kept informed, so he'll make sure that I edge up to it. But that surely is a good way to start. I hope tonight you understand that was draft. It was a feasibility study. There's nothing behind it. It is no longer owned by Runnymede. They're out of it. So are Surrey Heath and so are Woking. It is now being undertaken by Surrey, bidding for up to 250 million to deliver something to provide flow, connectivity, and to stop the issues that are creating bad things for your health and your well-being. Is that happy? Are you happy to do that through the Ottershaw Society?
You had a question.
Yeah, I was only a simple,
Sorry.
Graham Moss, I'm an Ottershaw resident. It's only a very simple question about fundamental logistics that underlie the modelling. You're talking about a 10-year plan. We're in a period of absolute change. High streets closing down, road transport changing, the nature of road transport changing, the demography of the population changing day by day. Yeah, what's the logistic basis of the modelling that you're going to put in for a 10-year plan that's going to affect everybody in this room? Yeah, how does this work?
It is a good question, and I'd like to give you a definitive answer. But the point is that you're right. You're absolutely right. That, you know, in 2 years' time, we could be in a totally different place. Whether it's with electric cars, flying cars, the demographics of what town centres look like, our high streets look like, internet, all sorts of other things can affect. At some point, you have to make a decision. At some point, you insure your house not because it's going to fall down, but actually you need to insure it. You make decisions in life based on what you think is going to happen and what you need. We have to do the same. It is not an exact science. There are people who put modelling together, there are people who look at communities, there are people who look at environment. All of those will feed into and refer to and be consulted on a plan that's going in, including the local community. So all of that stuff will be brought into the equation. Is it an exact science? Absolutely not, because you're absolutely right. You know, if you look 10 years ago, you'd never predicted where we're going today with housing numbers and everything else. And where are we going to be in 10 years' time? Who knows? So I think it's not an exact science.
Just to add on to that, I'm in adult social care, and we know that the number of elderly people over 80 between now and 2030 are going to double in Surrey. So we're actively looking to see, A, how we can accommodate them, and B, who's going to pay for it, which is more to the point. So just as much as work is done on highways, we are planning sort of to take care of all the elderly people that are going to come through the system between now and 2030. All right, as we now sort of at 8:20, I'm going to take a couple more questions and then we can wind down. And I'll ask the Ottershaw Society in due course, not tonight. I'll ask them if they see any benefit in putting together a working group because they have a very good newsletter that goes out to the members of Ottershaw Society, and they can keep their contact going. And I feed into that newsletter on a regular basis. So I'll come back to them at a later point. So I'll just take one or two more questions, and you with the next on my list, Jim. You finished? No. Okay, then I'll take the gentleman at the back, your second question.
Obviously, this concern is regarding the amount of traffic that potentially is going to run through this area. We have a school which is less than 2 kilometres away from that. We've received a letter at that school this week, and I'm a governor at the school, expressing concerns about the amount of pollution and the damage that pollution is doing to children. We're even going to be part of a clean air survey to see how much we could influence the school and the children into understanding about pollution. This is not going to get any easier if that school is going to remain within inside 2 kilometres of this pollution. Surely that is enough to say this should not be happening here. Otherwise, we're just going to put an abundance of pollution upon our children, which is going to have a dramatic effect upon their lives. We shouldn't even be considering this, because we've got nowhere to go.
There are two issues with regard to that. If a school is found to be at risk, there are steps that the county council can take. The educational part of the council plan at least 5 years ahead. 8 years ago, they knew we were going to have a shortage of primary school places, so we built primary schools. 5 years later, the problem has moved from primary schools to secondary schools. You plan for it. Developments, if they are large enough, can pay for a new school, and that school could be relocated. No, hold on, you asked a question. Air quality is and will become an increasing problem on our roads. But that's because we use the roads, increasingly so. When I came to Addlestone in '97, there were very few cars on our road. Now, it's awash with them. There are areas within Runnymede where if you wanted to go down it, in an ambulance, you'd have to smack cars as you went down there. The fire brigade couldn't manage it. That's because of the car ownership throughout the country. That's great. We started off in '97. My son was just getting old enough to have a driving license. He's got one. He's now got 3 children. One of them has just reached driving age. That's the way it builds up. Houses in the past did not have off-street parking. It wasn't required. Now most of the time, housing development has an off-street of some sort. A garage is never used for your car. It's used for your storage, and that's what ends up on the road. The point I made in the slides is this. You can't stop it. Something has to be done. So what we're saying is, let's work together and get it right for the future. Not for years, because I won't be here in 32 years' time. And on that basis, you have to lay the groundwork sometime. We mentioned that this scheme, if it goes forward, if it's paid for by somebody else, not by Surrey or the local boroughs authorities, it's going to be 5 to 8 years before it's complete. 5 to 8 years. By that time, traffic will have increased even further. There'll be more HGVs going down the A320. One of the things we're doing in Transport for the South East is putting in straightforward lines. If you want to go from A, go to B. Don't go to Z and then come back to B. That's one of the issues. It's very simple. Achieving it is the difficult part. But government has at last woken up that all forms of transport need investment. The problem is our roads aren't getting it at the moment, but some of the communities that I serve on are making sure our voice is heard, and that has to be the start of the conversation.
I hear excuses, but I don't hear solutions.
Can I come back on one point? You said about environment and air pollution and traffic, and we shouldn't do this because of actually to do this will improve the air pollution, and it's proven because I've done it. Part of what causes air pollution is cars sitting in traffic. If you can make the cars move better through a junction, you can improve air pollution, and we've done it. I know areas where we've sorted out traffic lights and actually made traffic flow better and improved an air pollution on an area where there was long traffic queues before. So to not do it, actually by doing it, we can improve air pollution because actually you can get traffic moving through better.
Where you travelling housing stuff?
Yeah. You're going to put gridlock straight back there, aren't you? Once there's thousands of houses, that means cars, that means gridlock instantly.
And he was right.
Can I suggest you have a look at the Runnymede roundabout that has just been completed? The waiting time to get onto that roundabout was 39 seconds. Doesn't sound a lot, but in that 39 seconds there's an awful lot of cars sitting. The throughput on that roundabout now is 9 seconds. That is 30-second difference, and it does make a difference. That was very, very polluted. It's less so, it's not clean air, but it's less so than it was before. That cost £7 million.
Wait till some new houses go there.
How many new houses were built between the 39 seconds and the 9 seconds?
I can't answer that at the moment.
It
All right.
very nice to know.
So we can have some questions out of Sheila first, and then there's 2 ladies on this side here. And then I think we're approaching half-past 8, and I think we've exhausted the subject. There's no other alternatives available. As I said in the introduction of my speech, there's no solution at the moment. So Sheila.
Okay, I'm Sheila Binns, and I'm the Secretary of the Management Committee that runs this hall. I've got 2 short questions. One is pertains to the hall and the car park opposite, a detail. The other is more general. The detail first. We're grateful to you, Councillor Few, for the support you have given us and for what you've said this evening about supporting the hall. That car park is essential to this hall. It's essential for the viability of the hall, not a replacement car park somewhere else, because people won't be able to walk. A lot of our users are precisely the people that Mel Few has spoken about, the 80-plus-year-olds. They can't walk very far. And a lot of the other users are people with children who also don't walk very far. We need that car park. So indeed do the village shops for their viability. So that's just one point. But there is a question, because you said you wanted questions. I would like an assurance that that car park will be retained. in whatever plan is eventually constructed, that you will have a car park to keep the viability of this hall. I'll just do my second, then I'll sit down. The other is, will the very valid points that have been made this evening make any difference? Will you take them back to a meeting and feed them into what's going to happen? Or has it just been a talking show? Thank you.
Well done. It's not just been a talking shop, and if you think that, then I wasted my time here this evening. The concern that we have is that we get it right for all people, and that's where we're starting from right now. I've offered a way forward to keep you in touch directly, and when we have something positive to show you, that we can say, that is a real possibility, we'll bring it to you for discussion with your community. Sheila, I would be mad to say you're not going to lose that. But how about I buy the steakhouse as part of the roundabout development? If there is that kind of roundabout there, how about you put your car park over there?
Hi, John Bailey at Ottershaw. Quick question.
Sorry, I have another question.
Just a quick question. So we've talked today about the Otter roundabout. Outside of this role, as you said, if you open up these roads here, they're just going to fill. And what we're trying to do is facilitate traffic from the M25 through to Woking. And you talked about this bigger plan. So why is Rainbow Council not looking at other options that bypass the village or do something on the M25 and take it through that way?
If I give you an example, when Longcross was first mooted as a development area, the obvious solution was to take it out onto the M3. Highways England will not allow it. It goes against their rules and their plans, and it's legislated that you can't have another exit or onset within so many meters of another one. You couldn't get it in on the M25 with 9, 10, 11 so close. That's the old issue. Bypasses requires land, and it also then will find numbers of people who say you can't do that, it's greenbelt. So ultimately, some decision has to be made. What we are trying to do is reach the best decision for everybody, but everybody is not going to be happy and satisfied.
I agree with that, but your slide up there said we've got two options, do nothing or there's Otter roundabout. I disagree. There's do nothing, there's Otter roundabout, there's bypass. All I'm asking, can we consider both options and not just limit it to Ottershaw?
We'll do all the options. Some we will spend less time on. I won't spend time on, our officers won't spend time on the M25. We know what the answer is going to be. Yeah, absolutely. Every option will be looked at. Guaranteed. But that's what we do with everything. It's not just Ottershaw roundabout. When we look at a big bid like this, then we spend a lot of time on it.
Okay, I'll take the last question and then we can wrap up for the night.
Well, you wouldn't have had this meeting this evening if the consultation had been better. A lot of people don't have the computers for a start. Secondly, if it wasn't for Anna Lane, we wouldn't know what the heck was going on because some of the documents are 1,000 pages long. And they take about 2 or 3 days to even understand them because in gobbledygook technical stuff. The reason why a lot of people are here on social media is because they don't look at it. The modern trend is for a different way of consulting. Consultations are mentioned again and again and again tonight. If it's of the kind we had so far in the past, you're in trouble. Well done.
Just as well I'm a kind gentleman, I'll take the last question.
I've sat there for hours and hours and I've tried to read through it all. There's a lot of issues with that proposal. You're saying it might not be like that, but that proposal that's been forward, there are some major issues with that.
I'm sure.
One in the report says that there will be no central crossings anywhere along 320 for people to get to the other side of the road. So if that's made into dual carriageway all the way through there, can we not even get across as pedestrians? And the other one, the final one, coming from St Peter's Way, I might have got this wrong, but coming from St Peter's Way approaching the roundabout, it looks like you can't turn into the building.
Correct. That's absolute lunacy.
Can I just say, I didn't realise that was written in, there would be no crossings, because actually that would never happen. Because actually, part of, no, I'm talking about when it comes to delivery, not what's written in that document. One of the things my officers look at is cars, pedestrians, cyclists, disabled access, blind access. They will almost go. This is one of the opposite side of the frustration is actually sometimes they over-design to actually account for all of these things, and that's some of the conversation I'm having in other areas where they've allowed for all these thousands of foot passengers, and people are saying nobody walks that way. And actually, I'm having to draw some of that down. So there will not be anything that will cut one side off from the other and make it barren. Crossings will be absolutely part of that.
There's no crossings now. It states quite clearly that it will slow down the traffic, which is what they don't want to do. Traffic.
And that will be part of it, but it will not stop it. Actually, they will not. They will never. My officers, and I know this because I've had, as I said, I've had the opposite argument. They will never say we won't put a crossing there because it will slow the cars down. They'll say the cars will have to slow down because we need to create pedestrian access. I don't say what that report says. I'm telling you what my officers do on the ground day to day, and I see it happening. So that is a smoke show. That will not happen. There will be, and actually when they make new junctions, part of what they will look at, they will not just look at this area and how do we get the traffic better through it. They will then model not just the car movements but pedestrian movements, and you will find that that will be better. And if it slows down the traffic, so be it. So they will look at the whole. You might find, like the ladies said over here about a bypass, you might find the junction can't handle it at all. So we need to do bypass, and we need to develop other ways of delivering it. There's all sorts of things that need to feed into it before we get to that stage.
Although it's the same traffic officers in Woking, that designed the crossing up Old Valley that resulted in two children being run over 1 week after it was open.
We don't have any crossings.
There is crossings there. The crossings.
But they're not.
I'm not going to comment because there's a police investigation. But that was not due to the junction. But there is an issue with the junction, which was designed by the developer. Absolutely, yeah. But that's not what caused the accident the other day. That was a different reason.
Okay. But
there is an issue.
But there is
and we've already, even before the accident, we've commissioned a report to say this needs to improve. So we'd already done the work. Yeah, no, I'm on the case. I've spent the last day and a half working on it. So.
All right, I'd like to wind up and say thank you very much indeed. I understand there's a level of frustration, primarily with the Runnymede Borough Council local plan, and I'm hoping that people will use the opportunity to write into the inspector whether you accept it or not. I've been in these plans, and if you make enough noise, you will be heard. So my advice is make certain that you do make your voices known effectively going forward. So thank you very much indeed, and I guarantee that certainly from my side, I'll keep the Ottershaw Society involved, and they can basically distribute the news for the rest of you. Thank you very much.